Guys, welcome back to 1776 or Bust. It has been a while, that is for sure. I haven't done a video in forever, so who knows what the quality is going to be. It can't be worse than it was, but you never know. So if you don't mind, give a thumbs up at the beginning of the video. That'd be great, so you don't forget at the end. And if you haven't subbed to the channel, please sub and all that great stuff. But today we're going to be talking about my initial impressions on this gun right here, which is the Walther PDP. Now, this is kind of the evolutionary movement away from, let's say, the P99 AS, the P99 in general, the PPQ, M1, M2, and this is eventually going to replace those guns completely. The P99 is no longer being made. This is actually going to be phasing out the PPQ. At least that's what I've read, that the polymer PPQs are gone. They're going to keep the Q4 and the Q5 steel frames, but pretty much that's the end of the polymer version of PPQ. Now, of course, the first thing I'm going to say is, Walther, you did a heck of a job marketing this handgun. When this gun was going to be released, everybody and anybody actually had this gun on their YouTube channel. Now, of course, I'm a nobody, so I didn't have that option to actually show you the gun. So I actually just got this about 2 weeks ago, and I've got to say there are some really impressive things about it, and then there are some things that are kind of question marks. I think overall it is a very good gun, just from the initial impressions, of course. And I think if you're a Walther person and you love Walthers, this is a gun you're going to want to get. For those of you out there who think I hate Walther because you've seen that CCP video, I do not hate Walther handguns. Just to give you kind of a roundabout way of how many I've owned a P99 AS, 3 PPQs, 2 PPS M2s, one being an RMSC, the Walther Creed, and yeah, unfortunately the CCP, which just didn't work for me. So I would actually classify myself as a Walther fan. However, the PPQ for me was a great gun. I think it was ahead of its class in regards to just the ergonomics, the trigger, and everything that came with it out of the box compared to some of the competitors that were out there at that time. Obviously, moving forward to modernize the PPQ versus just kind of starting over from scratch, I guess they just basically took the best parts of the PPQ and transferred it into this handgun that you see in front of you. So I'm going to take this to the table. I'm going to show you, kind of the marketing ploy that was used with some of the features of this handgun, and I'm going to talk about whether or not they're real or if they're hyped. I will tell you right now, it might surprise you what I think about this gun overall, but I am going to address all of the things that they marketed, from the grip texturing to the trigger to the slide to everything else, and then kind of give you my gradual interpretation of what I think about this handgun as a whole, just on the initial impression review. So stay tuned. Let's get to the table and let's get it. All right, guys, welcome back to the table for like the first time in about a month. So here you guys can see the Walther PDP. You can see the magazine in there. Now, keep in mind, unfortunately, I suck because I live in the New York State. So while these are 15-round magazines, I get a dent put in it so that I can only hold 10, which is really awesome. Now, let's talk about some of the features of this firearm. And I'm going to use all of the terms that Walther actually used when it came to marketing this handgun. So as I said previously, everybody and their uncle who is, a big star on YouTube in the gun community got this gun ahead of time for most people, obviously more so than, the average person like myself. Now, that's no knock against them. Some of these reviews they did were really good, spot on. And then now that I have the gun, I'm starting to question if whether or not some of those reviews were more marketing hype than anything else. Obviously, it's kind of silly because that some of them are obviously being marketed. Now, I want to go through each single thing that they mention on their website, and I'm going to start off with the performance duty trigger. That's right. The PDT. No, that does not stand for Pootie Tang. That is the PDT performance duty trigger. Now, according to their website, it is saying it is an improved trigger system which has been achieved by shortening the length of travel and increasing the tactile definition of the trigger brake. Now, what does that really mean? It just means it's a good trigger. Now, is it better than the PPQ or is this a hyped trigger? First off, it's kind of interesting. The gun is clear, okay? But the trigger, I'm going to say right now, is a lot smoother out of the box than the PPQ was. When I had my PPQs, one of the things I always noticed about the initial trigger pull was that the trigger always felt like there was a little bit of metal on metal contact, and I had thousands of rounds through all of them, and it never really went away. This one feels very smooth, very glass-like, which I do like. And then when you get to about that point right there, you actually feel that defined wall. The PPQ, while it didn't necessarily have the smoothest take-up, It also had kind of a rolling brake, so there wasn't really necessarily that click as soon as you get to the wall. And it is definable. You definitely feel that. Now, the trigger pull, it's great. I mean, it is just like a PPQ trigger pull. The reset is very short, very nice. It is not as forceful pushing your finger forward. If you had a PPQ, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So is this trigger an improvement based on what I remember from my PPQs to this in front of me? And the answer to that question is, yeah, I think it's actually a yes. I think it is real versus just hype. But that's the first thing. Again, the trigger is really nice, very glass-like. The trigger pull is fantastic. I don't have my trigger pull gauge near me right now. So it came in at 3 pounds, 11.9 ounces. So just shy of a 4-pound trigger pull, which I could definitely agree with. I don't think it's much heavier than 4 pounds. It is very smooth. Like I said, the take up is very good. Definable wall. I don't know if you can hear that, but you can definitely feel it. And then just a really nice smooth break. The trigger shape is really nice. Reset is very good. So again, is this hype versus reality? Guys, it's reality. It's actually a slightly improved PPQ trigger. And again, that's just initial impressions. I haven't shot it yet, but just from what I'm feeling in the trigger pull, dry firing it for a couple of days now, it is a little bit better than that PPQ, which to me says a lot about this gun so far. Now, the second thing they talk about on their website are going to be these things right here. Let's see. These are called, and guys, bear with me, this has got to be the dumbest name I've ever heard, but this is the super terrain serrations. So I guess if these were tires, they'd be, super terrain tires, but they're not. So these serrations, they're saying, are uniquely designed protruding serrations on the slide, allowing for quicker and more responsive hands-on engagement with the pistol. So let's put that in layman's terms. It means there are very good serrations on this handgun. And I am going to tell you, it is not hype, guys. That is the reality. These serrations are very deep. They're extremely deep. As a matter of fact, if you look at the top, it almost looks like there are lightning cuts in the slide or for a ported barrel and stuff. So that's pretty cool. But these serrations are super deep. I think towards the top of the slide, they are a little sharp, which is interesting. So they're not really, I don't want to say they're not like beveled, but they are slightly beveled, but not enough. But there's just a little bit of sharpness to that. But I mean, it is very easy to use those serrations. So do those super terrain serrations work? Well, I don't know. I don't have blood or water on my hands right now or like baby oil. But at the same time, I could see you getting a very nice tactile ability to actuate that slide if you had that situation, especially the baby oil. Now let's look at the performance duty texture. This is the next thing they mentioned on their website. So, you guys can see that texture. I mean, is this an improvement on the PPQ line versus this? I'm going to tell you resoundingly yes. This is some of the best texturing I've felt on any handgun out of the box. It almost feels like a very good custom stippling job. You'll notice you have more of that texturing. It's a little bit different here. This is a little bit more of like your, I guess, kind of typical, like a Gen 5 Glock almost in the front here. But the rest of the grip texturing goes all the way up to the top here, even kind of, just where your thumb would rest. It actually feels really comfortable. And the texturing on this is fairly aggressive, but it's not like M&P 2.0 aggressive. So it is a very good functional feel. I can't see this gun slipping out of your hand because this texturing is just spot on. It is excellent. And I'll show you a picture of that right about now. And you're going to see that even on the back of it, you can kind of see how the texturing actually protrudes so that it isn't just a flat surface. It's actually kind of like these little pyramids that stick out, but nothing like, let's say, a P10C or, what's the word? I can't even remember the gun, the Type B, the Archon Type B, which has great, texturing. But this is just great. I mean, they did a really solid job with this. This is definitely better than the PPQ. Definitely better than P99, that's for sure. But they did a really solid job. So texturing, perfect. You can see they have these little ripples here, very common to the PPQ. They're a little bit more noticeable, I think, on this compared to the PPQ. But they don't really, bother me at all. And I don't really think they would bother you. So let's go to the next one. And I think this one, I'm going to tell you off the bat. This is going to deal with their red dot ergonomics, or their claim that somehow the PDP Because of this little bump out here for your pinky, it's designed around making this the switch to the popular red dot sight system easier for the new red dot sight shooter and faster for the red dot sight veteran. So do I think that's hype or do I think it's real? Well, honestly, I haven't shot it yet, so I can't necessarily tell you. But if you've ever put a PPQ and a PDP side by side, you're going to notice the PPQ has kind of that same underhook right here. So I don't know. I'm thinking that's a little bit more hype than it actually is reality, because the PPQ has the same design. As a matter of fact, go back and look at the P99. P99 has the same design. Hell, even the CCP has that design. So I'm not sure if that's reality. Now, I watched a video today where the person was trying to say it was amazing that they brought it up to their eye level and it was spot on for them because of that. You guys, honestly, I don't believe that. I think this one was probably the most marketing hype more than any other feature that I saw on this handgun. So as it stands right now, the 4 things that they mentioned, the performance duty trigger, the super terrain serrations, the performance duty texture, and the red dot ergonomics, 3 out of those 4 are reality. The 4th one, that red dot ergonomic stuff, I'm not so sure, guys. I think that's a little bit more hype than anything else. Now, the last thing they actually talk about on the website is the modularity of this handgun. Now, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, that's nonsense. This is not a modular handgun whatsoever. You cannot take out the trigger control system and put it in a different anything. There's no modularity with this. Now, is there interchangeability? Yes, there is. You can take the longer slide, put it on this. You can put the shorter slide on, the longer grip gun. You can interchange barrels and guide rods and all that other great stuff. But is that really modularity? The answer to that question, in my opinion, is a no. That's more interchangeability. So they use the wrong term, in my opinion. So again, the modularity, 100% hype. It is not reality. Reality is it's interchangeable. It is not modular. Just my opinion, but I think it's based more on fact than anything else. Now, let's talk about the overall look of the handgun. Initial impressions, it just seems kind of blocky, to be honest with you. You're going to notice that the slide on the top here, it's it's definitely a different shape from the PPQ. I mean, the PPQ is more rounded, almost like a pyramid shape, however you want to say that. And this one is definitely a little bit squared off. Now, obviously, I think that has to do with the fact that you have to put a red dot on there. And if you had the thinness of the Walther slide or the PPQ slide, I don't know if it would be readily acceptable the way they've designed this one. The one thing I do like is you can see just how deep this cut is. So it's almost like a custom cut. So obviously you can use this and this for co-witnessing. The sights are adjustable for windage and elevation in the back. The front sight is not. It is also Glock sight adaptable. So that's pretty sweet. So if you have a set of extra Glock night sights or fiber optic sights, you can throw them on this gun and have no problems. And you do not need heightened sights or, suppressor height sights or any of that other stuff, because allegedly you can co-witness with regular height sights. I'm going to test that theory out as soon as I get some extra night sights for a Glock. So, the look is a little bit different. I think it's definitely a bit boxier. Obviously you can see here on the tip of the actual slide, they tried to bevel this to cut off a little bit more material. So they kind of thinned it. Maybe you could say it's because you want to put in your holster faster. Again, I don't know if that's necessarily true. They also took off or shaved some material here in the middle portion of the slide. And then you can see just how squared off it becomes. It kind of bevels in the front, squared with the big thick serrations here. Then it kind of, gets beveled a little bit more in there for thinness. And then as you go to the back, again, a little bit thicker so they can get those real deep slide cuts and then add that optic on there. Now, the gun does not come with an optic plate. I'm still waiting for mine. You just have to order it when you get your handgun. So once I get that on, I'm going to throw a Holosun on this thing and then see what I can do with it. I am going to be shooting this weekend next to the C9A2. I think that's going to be kind of an interesting head-to-head on this gun. But I mean, overall, initial impression wise, I think it's a pretty good offering from Walther. I don't necessarily know if it's perfect though. And if I was going to give one little negative towards this handgun, it's actually going to be this portion of the gun right back here. Now, one of the things that I'm going to say is I'm just not sure why Walther had to keep this portion right here so thick. It is very thick. So if you have small hands, I get a feeling you're going to be rubbing that knuckle. I don't see anybody mentioning that on reviews. I know Walther hasn't mentioned that, but I think if you're a small-handed person, even with the small backstrap, which this is, I actually took the medium backstrap off because I just kept getting a little bit of a knuckle rub there, and I haven't even shot the gun yet, so I've already noticed that. Once I put the small backstrap on there, I'm able to get a little bit lower, or I should say a little bit further in with my hand so that this knuckle doesn't rub up on here. So honestly, I think that is one flaw of the design of this handgun. You know, again, that's a lot of material there. I personally think they could have beveled these edges on the end here and kind of trimmed it down a little bit, almost like a Steyr, which I don't have on the table right now. My apologies. And I'll show that in the after shooting video. But I mean, overall, that would be my biggest negative complaint about this firearm. I mean, other than that, it does remind me a lot of the PPQ. I mean, obviously, takedown is identical. If I could take it down, that'd be great. But one of the things that I'm going to say is that you can see the difference in the spring here. I wish I had my old PPQs, but I don't. This spring is definitely different, and I think that's what gives you that little bit more of a smooth take up on the trigger pull. Other than that, it reminds me a lot of the PPQ in every way, shape, and form. So I'm really glad that they didn't really go away from the, just how good that firearm was. Again, I think the PPQ was well ahead of its time compared to its competition at that point. But I think it did need a little bit more modernization. Is this really what I was hoping for? In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. I think the grip texturing is great. The trigger is fantastic. The fact that it's optic capable, again, very modern, and I think that's where obviously most manufacturers are going. But I just wish they could have reduced the slide height. It is very tall, not a surprise. And I wish they would have reduced the actual thickness or the width of this right here. Overall, though, the initial impressions so far are very positive. I think a lot of the things they talked about with this firearm are actual realities versus hype. So my initial impression, this gun should be pretty fun to shoot, and it should be pretty damn reliable. So leave those comments down below. Tell me what you think about the PDP so far. Again, I'll be shooting this very soon, and I'll be returning with that review probably next week because I have to do the Steyr first. But so far, so good. So leave those comments down below, guys. Thanks for watching the video. And as always, freedom is never free.